Okay, we're live, which means I'm going to post the link here. Okay, so the only thing left we have to do is to remember our cool, nice, magic GitHub URL that we triage off of. Issues.
I wonder if we pin something, does that stay in the history?
I believe the notion that you pin something might stick around, but the actual item goes away.
Oh.
It's one of many amazingly awesome things.
Gotcha. Sorry, I just realized my mic was not muted when I was typing. I only got there. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okie doke. Okay, let me see if I can share this. Every sharing place is different. There we go. Present to everyone. All right. So I'm trying to remember the.
It's not no label, it's no milestone and no project.
No, okay. Go like that, and then. Fine. Does that seem kind of about right?
Yes, that looks correct.
Woohoo! All right, and then we add labels, and then it goes away, right? Or
yeah, we add labels when it goes away. But there is something like I wanted to start with this week. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm like on a different laptop, so I don't really know how the microphone is working.
You sound great.
Sounds pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Great. So what I wanted to do, like, actually, if I can share my screen real quick.
You absolutely can.
I'm going to try this. This is going to come off really weird because of Linux or whatever, but I'll try and send this over here. Can you all see this terminal window?
I think this is your entire desktop, so yes, you do have it.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah, it didn't look like there's a way for me to share just the window, but that might be user error as well. Because if you stop using a piece of, oh, here we go, application window. Yeah. And of course okay, 1 second. There we go, perfect. Bingo, y'all can see that, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So,
a terminal.
A terminal. Wow, it's a terminal. I've never seen one before. Okay, so Tasha can't be here because she's on PTO. But Tasha and I have been talking about a few different things that I really wanted to kind of bring up today. We were waiting until after Chef Comp for various reasons to like even begin discussing this. But we have a need to discuss some changes around. I guess it would be considered governance but specifically just the way that we are handling some of these issues in Triage. And let me see. Oh, am I actually screen sharing right now? I can't
You
tell.
are. I can see your terminal, but the little thing.
Okay, cool. Sweet. And I think there's a way for me to pin my thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So anyways, one of the things that we've talked about is that over the last few weeks, actually the last few months, but especially at ChefConf, I had a lot of conversations with people where they would say something along the lines of, I would really love to start contributing to the project, but I don't know where to start. And that's like, for anybody who's been involved in open source projects, that's a pretty common thing, right? There's a lot of pain out there around like, where do I get involved? And I have lots of people at ChefConf come up to me and say this like explicitly, hey, I would really love to do something, but I don't really know, like, it's not clear to me from the project where and how to get involved. So because of that, we've been discussing a couple different ways that we could theoretically lower that barrier to entry. And one of those ways is something that we've been talking about on the community engineering team. And it comes down to like really wanting a way to standardize how issues are labeled and the process around like how we handle those issues. And that, I mean, like we've already got most of this in place right now, but there's just like a last step that needs to be taken. Tom May, who's a wonderful individual in the chef community, wrote this tool called Repo Man.
Which is a great reference.
Which is,
yes,
yes.
Gothic rock opera with Sarah Brightman that came out a few years ago. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And what Repo Man does is it basically just calls the GitHub APIs to rewrite labels on your repos. So what I've came up with was just kind of based on a couple of other projects that are out there, specifically in the Rust communities, because the Rust obviously does a lot of this like community contribution and onboarding in a really, really wonderful way. So this is pretty much completely cribbed from the Servo project. But effectively, this is what I wanted to discuss and have us discuss as a team, everybody who can be here, discuss what this change might entail. But primarily what it is standardizing our labels on our repos. And the way the standardization works is more or less breaking those labels into specific subsets, specific categories. And all of this, like, we're kind of doing this now a little bit, but this takes it a little bit further in that, like, all of these labels have a prefix. And in the case of prefix, A is, we would end up putting, once we define what we want, we would more or less just put this in the wiki. But more or less, the A prefix is like the area of the code that the PR would have an effect on, right? It's pretty straightforward. C is more or less like the classification of the PR. And this is where things get really important, and it's just a very small group, but I think it's really important. E is for the level of effort. So one of the things that like I would really like us to do is we should be reinvesting in the Rust community, because if Rust succeeds, then our project is more likely to succeed. And if Rust succeeds, we're more likely to get external contributors. And obviously, getting external contributors is something we really care about. But the part of the problem that I think people have been having based on the conversations I've had is that it's not just that they like don't know what issue to jump into. It's like, and I ran into this myself when I joined the team, right? Like, I'm gonna write a PR. And I like hopped in and pulled an issue and started working on it. And like 40 hours later, I had not resolved it because there was no effort label on it and I didn't really know. So E is for the level of effort. And you'll see here a couple of things. Primarily, you can see that like we have easy, less easy, and hard. So easy, medium, and hard. And then we also have a label that I've added in called mentored. and this is like not something that we need to like define right now, but I think it would be pretty cool if those of us who are writing Rust regularly are willing to invest an hour or so a week into community members who want to contribute to Rust for issues that might be considered mentored, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy issues or hard issues, just issues that might kind of give help a new contributor have a broad understanding of the code base. And yeah, so anyways, that's the E's. L is the language. We don't need to like necessarily use all of these. S is the status of the PR. So we use all of these things right now, more or less, with the exception of the effort and the language. And what I would really like to do is to update our issues with these new labels and try to bare minimum be, as we're kind of triaging public issues like this, I'd like us to bare minimum try and estimate the level of effort that might go into the PR revolving around that issue. And I think in doing so, that gives us a couple different things that's kind of nice and easy to do. Like once we have a standardization around this, we could pretty easily just scrape the GitHub issue API for things like this and expose them into other things like our website. Or if we wanted to like make our community page more robust and have getting started as a contributor as some subpage, it'd be super easy to scrape these things based on these prefixes. Not that it wouldn't be otherwise, but it's something to think about. Does anybody have any thoughts or feelings about that?
I think it sounds great. I really appreciate the effort you put into this.
Is there any concern about changing the way that we label our work?
Well, if there's a tool to automate it, that's all the better. I've struggled in the last couple of months to get our core plans somewhat in harmony with the main repo. And yeah, I always have these problems of like knowing the language would be helpful. Knowing the parts of the code base consistently would be helpful. So I don't have a reason why we shouldn't totally do this. It's also going to help our quote unquote changelog, which is an interesting beast because we tend to use that when we push the release stuff, which is sort of like the Habitat code base minus builder, but the builderness kind of also creeps in. So there's really like sort of almost two changelogs going on, and this would also help to like tighten that up a little bit too. Yeah. That's not even something I had thought about, but I didn't. That's a great point. Well, it's hard to say like, hey, there's a new release. What's new in the studio code, or what new features in the supervisor? And that still involves a little bit of reading and curation. And this would, I think, help with that a bit more. Yeah. And so like once these labels are in place, there's a couple of other projects that I would really like to spend some time with. And some of that is to make our bot a little bit more intelligent, because ideally, like it should be pretty easy for the bot to do some of the labeling as an issue is opened, so that a new user wouldn't even necessarily need to flag it. Now, the effort and stuff, like obviously some of this is going to require, it's like has to be part of our triage process. And so the next step of this is like, we can do a couple different things. We can update these labels right now, and we can do this for this triage, or we can wait until next week and we can do triage the regular way this week, and then next week we'll I'll just do the work after triage. What does anybody have any preference?
No time like the present. Why don't we try it this week and see how it goes?
Yeah, I mean, we can give it a shot. But I didn't want to do it if there's concern. So because so the tool here that we've got, like just to kind of go through the details, these label maps when you see, it's all TOML, obviously. When you see a mapping in an array and then you see the name, what that's going to do is replace that label. When there's no mapping attached, like here, it's just creating a new label. And then the only other thing I did not add into this TOML file is I did not tell it to delete any labels. So I'm planning on doing that as like a second run because it's not necessary. So long as we start with one thing, we can kind of go from there.
It'll also let us know what we missed. So there's one in here which we tend to use a whole lot internally, which I find hilarious and fun, is the do not merge, which is, I got stuff, but please don't be overeager and merge it yet. That's more like, I guess, for people who can, have push access to the repo, but that's probably one that would still be useful.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly why I left that in here. And really, like, maybe we should have a status of do not merge label. That seems like the thing. Like,
well, that's where I was scanning for it. So
yeah. Let me just add it real quick.
So I noticed you've got a couple, like awaiting review and awaiting merge, both mapped to ready.
Yeah. So that's definitely a good question. The ready label, I don't think we're actually using it right now. I might be wrong. Like, it may be on some things, but it was unclear to me looking through the repo whether or not ready meant ready for review or meant ready for
ready to work on.
Yeah, right. Like ready to be worked on, ready for review. So
unfortunately, we've had more than a few tools, and some of them involve like auto adding labels. So there's probably a little bit of a like graveyard atmosphere going on.
Feature waffle.io.
That's I tend to agree. That feels about right to me too. And I'm not sure what the GitHub projects do exactly. I don't think they add labels, and I don't think they use that to track stuff. But
they don't add labels. It's a separate. I think it's a separate API completely.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that. I mean, it'd be cool if there was some tooling to automatically add labels like that, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do this. I'm gonna copy this and put it in a snippet in the core maintainers channel real quick. And if you all want to give a cursory look through the list and see if there's anything, like I went through and looked at everything that was live and tried to map everything. But if you all want to check in there real quick and look through the list of labels.
What's the habitat.sh label? Is that meant to be the website?
Yep, that's PRs that are specific to the homepage or the website. Some of these we're not even we're not using, but like won't fix. Realistically, if we're not gonna fix something, it probably should get closed.
I think that may be a default one you get now on GitHub repos, and I always find that one like mildly aggressive in a negative way. I don't know. It never feels that one never feels good. I've never felt comfortable putting that on anything.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. We totally don't.
Like if anything, they won't fix might be because somebody didn't understand, and it's a documentation problem. So like, it always in my mind maps to something else.
Is that possibly useful for like historical reference? Like if we're going back through like old issues and like we say, oh, we decided that this is not something that we're going to fix. Why was that?
Yeah, and that might be worth the reason for keeping it. I can't even remember if we've used it, but it's possible we have.
That's the only thing I could think of. I agree. It seems a little in your face, like saying, I'm not going to fix this for you.
That's right. Like, thanks for taking the time.
I guess
We're never going to address this.
I guess the question would be like, do those labels? I think they do. They stick around after you close an issue.
Yeah, and I guess that would be. I mean, there's probably API stuff you could pull that from, or do searches on label by such and such. So it's probably not a bad idea for the moment to probably keep that. We could always again do that second round of culling or looking for labels that appear to never have been used.
Yeah. Cool. Did anybody see anything in there that like stuck out as crazy or anything that like that I'm just completely missing?
So will these be the same language set, it looks like, across all the repos?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just putting the like core plans hat on. And I know we have a few ways of, at the moment, signaling for things. Maybe with Builder that's not a problem anymore, but the like a, what is it, new version as a tag on something versus a new plan. The other thing I've been starting to add, because I wanted the core plans to have the expressiveness of our main repo, is I was starting to try to add the notion that like this issue or PR had to do with scaffolding, because right now that's where the code base lives.
Okay.
So that would be probably another A section, I guess. And I think I can't remember if I added, like effectively a language label for it, because I wanted to reflect the fact that it was for Ruby scaffolding. But it looks like this is going to be totally taken care of now with the L flags or the L labels.
Yeah, and I mean you can still go in obviously and like change and add stuff through the UI. And
Repo's man job, if I understand right, is more of a like one-shot conversion into normalized things rather than something that keeps maintaining.
Yes. This is a single run. Yep.
Yeah.
We just run it once, and it updates all of the repos at once, as opposed to like, which I mean, we don't even have to do it that way, right? Like it can literally be, we can run it once, we can go in and curate after we've run it once, or we can add all of the things.
This would be great if we end up having it somewhere, even if it was a gist or a repo with the stuff whenever we like fire up our next repo. That doesn't tend to happen very often, but if it does,
right.
we at least got a way to repopulate something.
I think like, so my plan was, like a gist would be great, but my plan was to put this with documentation of what these things mean into the wiki.
Yep, even better.
So that we would have, so I added Ruby. I mean, like we can add the rest of this stuff later, but we also can change. Right now, this is like, these are the primary repos that I think we get traffic on.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I didn't see any others that like felt like it was worth updating the tags for. And actually, even like the language habitat one, I don't know that it really needs to be in there. In fact, I'm gonna strip that out. All right.
I've got a couple questions.
Yes.
What is the distinction between needs decision and needs discussion?
So in the past, we've had problems with coming to a concrete conclusion about issues. So needing to have discussion is probably something that we would use for RFCs, or for if there's an issue that like you feel one way about it, but you know that other people might feel differently. If there's any kind of context that needs to happen from different perspectives, and then needs decision would be basically whether or not it's more or less like a nag tag to come back to in our next triage, to say like, hey, we didn't decide on this last week on whether or not we want to accept it or close it, so we should talk about it again. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I think the exact distinction, I think, is still a little hazy for me, but it seems like, you could say that they're like two sides of the same coin, or
yeah. Do you think it makes sense to get rid of one of them, or?
Maybe. Or maybe needs decision, maybe like just make it more explicit, like, revisit or re-triage, or I don't know. That's making up bad words.
Yeah, I know the Rust process. I can't remember what they call for that, but they kind of like time window some of these things where they need to close it out in order to either close an RFC out, or because there's a release and there's some way. It's like a final comment period. I think it's something like that, which is like now there's a clock running, and unless say your piece and then it's done. So I know for me, I've used the discussion before in other repos where someone will land an issue and say, could we use the Habitat gossip ring as a key value store? And like personally, I don't want to do that, but other people might want to talk about that, and so like I wouldn't even know how to classify it. But if people just want to talk about that, then that's when I tend to just put the discussing tag on, and we're just having a discussion. But like I don't know what's going to come of that, other than people are going to go back and forth. So I know, I guess I've used that when I don't really know how to classify something.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like this should be flexible. We're a relatively young project, so I don't think that it's like the end of the world if we need to change our labeling in another week. This is kind of more just a starting point, is what I kind of was imagining. But
and another couple questions about some of the new tags at the bottom list.
Yeah.
Yeah, so something like needs code changes, needs squash, needs rebase. The first one in particular, is that something that we want to tag, or could that be handled by like a GitHub code review? Like you can mark, that something needs changes, and that's actually like a thing on the PR.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how exposed that is, like with an API or anything, but like some of those things could just maybe be aspects of the PR itself.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, like the needs code changes and everything. Yeah, absolutely. GitHub code review will give us the big red flag. I think some of this is more just is probably unnecessarily verbose for the case of wanting to expose all the things.
I think some of these ideas even predated that notion of the GitHub review, which is only in the last, I don't know, 4 to 6 months. So I know I've definitely used stuff like this before, because when I go and look back through a PR, I'm ready to hit merge, but then like, oh nope, we told them they have something left to do. So yeah, I think you might be right that the GitHub release thing might actually allow us to stand a couple of these down.
Some of the things might also be. Sorry, go ahead now.
Going back to slightly, when this is with the decision discussion, because needs discussion sound like it's invited into these decision needs formation. So I see it as a difference in audience.
You know what, Nell? I'm not sure if your close mic is actually on.
I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Okay. Yep, the Google Hangout was using the wrong microphone.
Of course, yeah.
All right, so repeating very briefly, going back slightly to the difference between needs decision and needs discussion, I see needs discussion as appealing to the community to input on something. I see needs decision as saying a core maintainer needs to make a decision on this. So I think it's a difference in audience that's being solicited to input on the PR or issue or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was thinking too now.
It's kind of like the moderator technique, right? Now we're going to have a discussion, and now we're going to bring it to a close.
Right.
And
so the only other thing about having labels for stuff like this is just that, like if you go to our open pull requests, or we go to your open issues, you can just see all the labels there without having to open up the thing, which I think right now we get the X for code review, but we wouldn't see for like code changes, but we wouldn't necessarily know whether or not, just with a cursory look, whether or not it's an issue of like we asked somebody to squash their PR or rebase. I don't know if anybody cares about that though. It may be unnecessarily verbose.
That might be something that we could like have the bot become smarter, and maybe it could detect that and mark them accordingly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would like for a lot of this stuff, is to just have it offloaded into the bot and let the bot do all the things.
Speaking of the bot, we need the bot to be consistent across all of our repos.
Yeah,
I know that's like our internal chore maintenance work, but yeah, if anyone has time or wants to look at that, that'd be great.
So for now, should we strip these out, and we'll just go like get rid of these 3 from here down?
It's fine by me.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. I'm going to stop sharing my screen somehow, theoretically. Am I still sharing, or am I good?
You are not sharing.
Perfect.
Your squid head.
Yeah, okay, good. And I'm not sharing because I have API keys that I have to pass into this thing. So I don't want to do that on YouTube, because I have done that before. Sweet. So I think I should just be able to run like that. Oh, whoops.
Whoops. What's the whoops?
I didn't do a bundle install first.
Oh yeah.
So this is a little Ruby project. So gems are important.
Another item on the
crap.
to-do list, I think, is to update our Sentinel code base to look more like a just straight up Ruby app, and then use our scaffolding to wrap it.
Yeah, yes, that would be fantastic.
Because that would be a great little example.
Oh, it doesn't like my credentials now. Okay, let's do this. Fletcher, if you wouldn't mind starting the actual triage, I'll work on this in the background. I don't think it'll take long. I just need to resolve a couple of quick things.
Okay.
And then we can kind of.
Okay. That one, that one. There. I think that, oh, and then there's a sorting thing, right? We want to sort by recent, newest.
Yep.
Recently updated? Does that sound right? Or just newest?
I think just newest is how we word it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, then let's try 2541. That kind of makes sense. So I'm going to have to, I guess, use the existing labels for the moment, unless the new ones show up. Is that right? Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, they'll show up in just a moment, but yeah, yes.
So I'm going to guess that is I don't even know if we have a website one. I know well, maybe that's what that was meant for. Does that seem right?
I think so.
And typically I would look at that as either a chore or a feature, but I always think of things positively, that it's value. So I usually would call it a feature. Right, and it's the milestone that takes it out of our triage, right? So from what I remember, this would be an accepted minor, given that it's not a lot of effort and work, and
Yeah,
we're gonna do it.
Planning to do it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. So 2539. Wow, that's not awesome, is it? New builder links are not working. So I believe that subdomain is actually BLDR, but
I think that it is. But I think so. The thing about it is, the documents. Yeah. So this is the issue: was that the documentation and a couple of issues. Tasha talks about setting that to BUILDER.
right. Okay.
And I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what the correct approach is, but.
Might not be a bad idea just to set up a redirect.
No,
yeah, so I'm wondering, like, having it written down in issue is one thing, but where was the source of the confusion is kind of what I'm wondering.
I think.
So I
think
go ahead.
Looking at those issues, like an issue of Tasha's, where she was asking for that specific host name to be set up.
Yeah. Okay. So is it because we don't have? Like, it looks like what we did is the real URL should be, and it's actually BLDR, and except for this one, I think the rest are probably. Well, I don't know. I guess it's new builder links are not working. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to test, I guess, if we just try and hit those.
Yeah. I'm not too surprised by that. Depot. Please work on. Yeah, that is not what I would have expected us to go back to the website.
Right. Well, and that's partially because you're not signed in, right? Because we redirect if you're not signed in back to the homepage.
Interesting. I guess my user brain didn't expect that. Expected to go here.
Yep.
Because look at that, I'm not logged in and I can go there.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah.
Well, feels like there's probably some things to do on that. I would kind of consider that a bug.
Yep.
Kind of like.
And also, if you give it like 5. Oh, it's updating those tags right now.
Yeah, this will be fun. As long as app still works.
App does, I believe.
Is like that was the pre-existing one, so just for continuity, that would be a good idea to maintain. Yeah. And look at that, it goes to the right place. Actually, it doesn't redirect either, so I'm guessing we've got a CNAME rather than a URL forwarding thing going on.
Yeah.
That might be better as a redirect.
Yep.
Just as an aside, I noticed the milestone accepted minor seems to overlap with like the notion of effort labels.
Yeah, you might be right.
So it's not necessarily effort. The minor and major is more like referring to the semantic, like if when we define this, and now these can also change. Let's start there. Like those milestones, we defined them several months ago, and we can totally change them if we want to. Minor and major were not about effort as much as whether or not the change would be a minor change or a major change in regards to semantic versioning. Like if it's a change that's absolutely going to be, a major breaking change, or if it's just a new feature or bug fix or whatever, then it would be considered minor.
Gotcha.
But yeah, if those are not descriptive or clear enough to an outside person, then they should definitely change.
Yeah, so it seems like those would be good, like general buckets to classify things by. Seems like milestone is more for. Seems like a slightly different kind of data, though.
It is. It absolutely. It's not what the milestones were meant for. It's just, but yeah, classifying them in buckets is more or less what how we started out, and doing it with a milestone as opposed to a label or the like.
Yeah, because hilariously, the way that we do our releases, we've got at least 2 pieces of software in that one repo for like moving release times. They don't correspond to GitHub tags, and we don't necessarily know what the next version might be. Like a lot of other projects might know that like this will go into the 1.2 release, and we don't really have that. So I agree, it is a little. We're using it very uniquely right now.
And there may be better ways too. I mean, like there probably are better ways. Yes. So we have a link, but it's in the footer. It's not. Yeah, we don't direct any traffic there currently.
So that is meaning when I go here. Oh, like yeah, where's the form link? Basically, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Whoops. Whoa. Look at that.
They're all the colors are habitat themed.
Wow. That's interesting. There's only one. Oh, maybe this is like in flight right now.
It's running through. It runs through them label by label.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I don't know why it's taking super long, but it's taking a super long time for each label. So.
Yeah, I wonder when you're going to hit some weird API threshold throttling limit.
I probably.
Why it's taking so long.
That's what I'm wondering.
It might incorporate that into the code, like it only makes X requests like every minute or so just to stay away from that.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that means I would consider that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and any of these other ones are going to get replaced, so it should be fine either way.
Cool.
Oh, I know why it's taking so long. It's because it updates every issue with the new tag, the new label.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
I think, yeah.
I guess
Do we generate anything as far as Git at all?
that's a good question.
You're not necessarily creating a new repository when you're creating a Habitat package. So we would want to at least be aware, like if there is a git ignore file there, not to like blast it away with our own.
That would be how I would tend to do it. Is if there's a .git ignore, try to append to it if there's not already an entry, and otherwise don't do anything. Because otherwise we need to have like an exclude git ignore flag, and then it gets just sort of strange.
And then like if you're not using Git, if you're using some other version control system, then
yeah,
there's that.
Perforce ignore.
Right. An HG ignore, .cvs ignore. I think there was something like that.
That being said, like we could make it, sort of smart and do some auto detection like the scaffolding does. Like,
yeah.
Of course, yeah. If you're, I don't know. We could get into weird edge cases there too, probably.
I guess the short version is I have this feeling like we're going to probably take a pass through Hab Planet like imminently soon. I know Ian and I are both thinking that at least independently, that there's a few things we'd like to see changed, and I could see this being swept up in that. So I do like the spirit of it.
Yeah. We can put it in help wanted. I mean, unless we're planning on taking over it, but.
So that would be CLI, a feature, right, and that help wanted is in here. And I'll say yeah, I think that the normal flow, I'm just thinking with that developer experiences, like I already have an app. It might be in version control. So when I run this, it's against like a directory of stuff that already exists. So we just need to be a little bit more careful about making an assumption. But otherwise, yeah, that sounds like pretty nice, especially because we know probably what that directory is going to look like. I think if you take the wildcard off this and don't have a leading slash, it would be any results directory in the code base would be ignored. And that's probably all right. Or we do it at the root of the, might make more sense, yeah, at the same level that the Habitat folder's parent directories. Anyways, implementation detail. It's a good idea. All right.
Huh. Yeah, so we were talking about this earlier, and it was at first like there was a discussion that was around like the fact that we don't do any checking of source code. Like in this was, I think, somewhat tangentially related to that. Like we don't generate a SHA against source unless you're downloading it as part of the process, right?
Right. So this might be some use case that is maybe not known to a lot of people until they stumble into this. Really what I do is I'm pretty lazy and tend to trust the internet unless I can find, unless it's Ruby Lang's site and I can copy that SHA-256, is I usually let the build program just download it. And then it dies and it says like the expected value and computed value, which is the value once it downloads it, it SHA-sums it. And I'll just usually make my package SHA-sum equal to like nope or something. So I know exactly which one I need to copy, and then I'll update my plan and run it again. It was something we had in like so long ago, and I know Jamie put it in because in my mind I thank him every time for like, oh, that's so nice. So in that sense, like it's not a feature per se, it's just how I tend to do it because I'm lazy. So I don't know what we would do to help, like help that. I've seen other people use wget on their workstation and download it and run the SHA-sum command and copy and paste that. That's like another good way to do it.
I've done that.
Yeah, because at least like once you trust, you need to have some basis for trust for that SHA-sum, and if it looks good to you, then that works pretty good.
I just did that earlier today.
Yeah, and Ian, you're right that's mostly for other source code that we are like fetching and then building. So like more the core plans than like the app developer case. But I guess I'm struggling to know what we would need to do additionally for this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it fits. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be more along the lines of people that are core maintainers, but I think this is Matthias who opened this, and I think that he's probably more along the lines of someone who wants to be a contributor and who sees value in that. And I don't know if like it's possible that in the future that there may be some other use case where there's projects that are hosting lots of habitat packages or something where that might end up happening again, or as well. I don't know. But it might be worth discussing further. I don't know. Or maybe not.
Yeah. Like I would rather not have that as a command proper of Hab, because it seems like that is a very one-trick pony that we don't even use in the build program. So on that note, like if somebody was to make a tool and make a plan for it in a package, like that's pretty much done right there.
Also seems like, it's kind of part of the responsibility of like a plan, like whoever's like creating a plan to make these packages, like to make sure that, they're building it with the right information.
Right.
Right.
From what I remember, so Pacman coming from Arch Linux, which also does pretty aggressive like updates and stuff, and they have abilities in their package build to do, like they can take SHA-sums of like Git repos and interesting things like that we're not even really quite at that level. So I think when you have like a fast-moving piece of software that like releases are being cut all the time, and you want the ability to like update the version, but then you also need to update the SHA-sum, I'm guessing that's where the need for this command and tool in their build system has sort of come from. So we might eventually get to that place, but I just don't see our software moving quite that fast yet.
Sure. Yeah. Then in that case, I'm comfortable with saying that, like, we can put it in help wanted and say, if this is something someone wants to build, we would accept it. But it's not something that we're likely going to prioritize right now, just because we already have the feature for, to plug in to generate.
Right. That's it.
And let's check the labels here.
Yeah.
There we go. And
I guess plan build.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's roughly. That is my code, or in my head, the code thing for kind of build system proper. It's roughly in that space, I guess. I don't even really know what that would be in terms of. I guess it's somewhat feature-ish. It's yeah.
I think it'd be a feature. And then we should try to label with effort level. I mean, which I think probably less. I think probably easy. I don't imagine like a lot of work. Like you could literally wrap the call to G256 whatever, or SHA-256 sum or whatever, and
basically like a shell script with busybox as your dependency would give you pretty much that functionality, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Or choose any language, which would be a nice fun project for doing file downloads and checksumming.
Yep.
Like if somebody wanted to try out Rust on something, this would probably be a fun project, I guess.
Most definitely.
Well, that looks good. Oh, I must not have clicked easy like I thought.
Yeah, you did. Maybe refresh.
Yeah, this is probably just a lot of stuff happening. Oh, look at that. Off by 1.
Sorry.
Hey, that's starting to look pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
Like professional and shit. All right. So we're over time now for what we had scheduled today. And that's partially because that's 100% because I wanted to spend the time to talk about changing this process and also changing the process. So I'm happy to hang on with anybody who wants to hang on. But if we need to call it quits on the stream, that's also totally fine. I think if we do anything else in this meeting, we should probably get the things that we just sorted, and we should probably try and label them all with effort levels. Like not all of these, but the things that we already put in buckets.
Yeah, we could try that. I wouldn't mind getting some to eat myself.
Yeah. Well, then let's do this. Why don't we just? I can go in and do those. Let's call it a day for this week, since we're already over on time. Okay. And next week we'll reconvene with like a whole meeting to follow the new process. I've got a follow-up blog post that I will put in, and I will likely publish that when I get the wiki page updated to include this information. And I'm going to try and get that stuff done here by the end of the day tomorrow. So
nice.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for hosting, Fletcher. Really appreciate it.
I hit a button. That's good.
Fantastic. Sweet. Cool. Well, I guess we can stop broadcasting then.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next time.
All right. Thanks a lot.